Dress sense isn't as good, but class knowledge might be a little bit better. I remember coming home from school in 1965, and I was really, really excited. I was 10 years old, and because the Daily Mail had said that tonight's episode of Blue Peter was going to be dedicated to the world's most famous rabbit. So I thought, bloody hell, 3/4 of an hour of Bugs Bunny. And I sat there waiting and waiting, and I hadn't a bloody clue who Peter the Rabbit was. And he went on for 45 minutes. And you might think that's an irrelevant story, but it's not. Because I sit watching the telly now, and I hear what they're talking about, but what they're not talking about is what everybody else is talking about. The one thing they won't mention, they will tell you about anything, except for the most important thing in Britain. And everybody in Britain understands what that is. If they didn't 12 months ago, they understand what it is now. Class. Everybody understands what class is, because they've been taught by the ruling class in the last 12 months. And I don't want David Cameron telling me, or anybody else in this country, that we shouldn't be looting, we should be saving up. Give me a list of everything that he's ever saved up for. And I don't want David Cameron telling me, you should pay off your credit card. What credit card has he ever had? And the reason people have credit cards, the ruling class change words. For credit card, use tick or slate. It's exactly the same thing. It's high interest for borrowing money to buy things that you can't afford. But we're in a situation now where class is the big issue. My daughter, who's 21, told me the other day that she'd written a book. She says, Dad, it's better than Chaps. I said, it'll be going soon if it's better than Chaps. You know, it's better than Chaps, kid. I've got a bit more idea than him. She says, I've written a book, and it's the best title, it'll be a big bestseller. I said, what's it called, Greta? She says, Being Post Crap. I says, well, how many paragraphs, how many chapters is there? She says, there's no chapters, Dad, that's just a title, and it's in a cellophane wrapper, but it'll sell thousands before people find out. But it is crap, and a lot of people are beginning to realise that it's crap. I went to a funeral the other week. As you get to the age that I do, you start going to the funerals of the people that you learnt off when you first started getting involved in the movement. And I went to the funeral, and there was a debate between 4 or 5 75-year-olds about things. And this lad next to me, I didn't know this lad, and he says, bloody hell, 1963, I remember it well. He says, I wanted to buy a motorbike sidecar. He says, I had 2 young kids and a wife and a mortgage, and I was desperate to get a job without a pension. And I took a day off work, and I spent all day ringing round Barnsley to find anywhere where there were a job without a pension, and I couldn't bloody find one. I wanted to opt out the pension scheme. I even rang Curry's up the electrical stores and said, tell me, you can't have a pension scheme, have you? And he says, we've got a great pension scheme here, kid, so I hung up on him. And you might think that's ridiculous, but it's absolutely true. And I think the saddest thing in Britain today is that following the Second World War, people assumed that the world was getting better for them, for ordinary working people. It's a normal working class characteristic that my life might be crap, but my sons and daughters and my grandsons and my granddaughters will be better than mine. And we're faced with a precipice now, aren't we? We're faced with a precipice where it isn't going to be like that, where my daughter's got a £23,000 overdraft and she hasn't got a house or a job. We're faced with a situation where the ruling class have put the debts of this country onto the people of this country that's been brought about by other people. And George Orwell said it's really important that when the ruling class of the papers write about things, they give it a name that you don't understand. So it took me 3 months to find out what friendly fire was. It took me 3 months to find out what collateral damage is. And it took me a week to find out what a technocrat is. A technocrat is an unelected leader appointed by somebody else to take your money out of your bank. So I'll finish on this really, because the situation in Britain is very clear to ordinary working people. It might not be clear to the leadership of some unions, and it might not be clear to the leadership of the Labour Party. You don't need to say, as the leader of the Labour Party, like Ed Miliband did in June, I would cross a picket line. What you need to say is, if somebody were doing something like that to my pension, I'd be doing something about it. That's all you need to say. And I don't want John Bercow coming on the television like he did the other week, attacking people going on strike, when he's got a £40,000 a year pension for being the Speaker of the House of Commons. Not the MP's pension, that's a different pension. for being the Speaker of the House of Commons is an automatic £40,000 a year pension. And unfortunately for our class, we're going to learn a lesson over the next period. Some people tried to kid us in the 60s and 70s that the world had changed, that the bankers had changed, that capitalism had changed. Well, I'm an unreconstructed socialist. I'm not only proud of being a socialist, I am sure that's the only way we can organise the society that we live in. Absolutely positive about that. And it's no use whatsoever just making the bankers the target. You've got to say what the bankers are doing. The old saying from the 1920s that what the anti-trade union legislation and the Tory party are about is tying the hands of the ordinary working people while you mug them and take the money out of their pockets. That's exactly what that legislation is about. We need to ignore that legislation. We need to say to our people, there are lessons to be learnt. And David Cameron's learned them lessons. David Cameron went to school, a school that teaches them lessons. Because if there's one class in this country that understands class solidarity, it's his class. They spend 13 years at Eton understanding that. And it's our job over the next period to explain to our people, the 99%, that our class can be solid, our class can get rid of their society and a decent society. Thank you very much. Cheers.